Welcome now to Saints in the Shadows. Hear the stories of the saints, learn about things you never knew. See if you can figure out who the saint is before the end.
All right. This one I call The Saint Who Walked. It is one of those slightly more rare saints, so don't be surprised if you don't get him at first. But you know what? You might actually get this one. We'll see. We'll see. It's only bread. At least that's what they would have said. A small bundle carried through the streets of Rome. Nothing remarkable, nothing valuable, nothing worth dying for. Well, or so it seemed. Now, when you think of the great heroes of the early church, your mind probably goes to familiar names. Peter, Paul, maybe even Stephen. Men who preached before crowds, faced emperors, and changed the course of history. And if I told you tonight's story takes place in Rome during the time of persecution, you might already think you know who we're going to. A bishop, perhaps. A priest, a famous martyr whose name has echoed through the centuries. You're wrong, because this story is about a boy, and history rarely notices boys. The Christians of Rome were living carefully, not secretly, exactly, but carefully. The empire had periods of tolerance and periods of suspicion, and during the worst times, gathering for worship could carry a cost. Prisons held believers. Homes concealed gatherings. The faithful learned how to recognize one another without drawing attention. And still, life went on. So did worship. So did the Eucharist, the sacrament of the altar. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the early church, you might imagine its greatest concern was survival, avoiding arrest, avoiding punishment, avoiding death. But again, you'd be wrong. Because even when believers were imprisoned, the church worried about something else. How do we bring them Holy Communion? How do we bring Christ to those who cannot come to the gathering themselves? And that question created a problem, a dangerous one. Someone would have to carry the Eucharist through the city. Someone would have to pass the eyes of informers, guards, and curious strangers. Someone would have to carry a treasure hidden in plain sight. And naturally, you might expect a priest to volunteer, or perhaps a deacon, a trusted leader, a seasoned Christian, a man with experience and authority. And if that's your guess, well, you're wrong again. Because the volunteer was young, very young, a young boy, in fact. We know almost nothing about his family, almost nothing about what he looked like, almost nothing about the years before his name entered history, which is usually how these stories go. History loves kings. History loves generals. History loves celebrities. But saints? Saints often arrive as ordinary people carrying extraordinary choices. And this saint who walked, was ordinary. At least until the day he accepted a mission, a simple mission. Take the Blessed Sacrament to imprisoned Christians. Protect it, deliver it. That's all. No speeches, no miracles, no crowds. Just a journey through the streets of Rome. And if you're listening carefully, you may be wondering, where's the danger? Where's the conflict? After all, a boy walking through a city hardly sounds like the beginning of a martyr story. And quite frankly, if that's what you're thinking, well, you're wrong. Because some treasures attract attention, and some secrets refuse to stay hidden. As the young boy walked, others noticed him. A group of boys. Friends? Acquaintances? Strangers, maybe? History doesn't quite tell us. But they saw something unusual, something he was holding closely, something he seemed determined to protect. And children are often driven by the same force as adults. Curiosity. What are you carrying? They demanded to know. Show us. Let us see. Now, this is the moment where you expect reason to prevail. A quick explanation, a harmless answer, some way of avoiding trouble. Because surely no one would risk everything over a hidden bundle. Surely this ends with laughter, misunderstanding, and everyone going home. And if that's what you think, well, you're wrong. Because the saint who walked knew exactly what he carried. And for him, it was not bread. It was not a package. It was not an object. It was Christ Jesus he carried. And he would not surrender it. The crowd pressed harder, demanding, mocking, threatening. The boy tightened his grip, refusing, and suddenly the situation changed. Curiosity became anger. Anger became violence. The kind that grows quickly when the crowd realizes it cannot get what it wants. They struck him again and again. The demands continued. Give it up, show us, let us take it. But the saint who walked refused. Now let's pause there for just a second, because this is the point where we often imagine courage looking dramatic. A warrior charging into battle, a martyr standing before a tribunal, a saint delivering some unforgettable final speech. But honestly, courage doesn't always look like that. Sometimes courage looks like a frightened boy refusing to open his hands. And that kind of courage can be harder to recognize and harder to imitate. The blows continued. Eventually, someone found him, a Christian, at least according to tradition, perhaps a soldier, perhaps a passerby. Accounts vary, but the result is the same. The attackers were driven away, and the saint who walked was rescued, at least physically. But by then, the damage had been done. His injuries were severe, and before long, the boy who had set out carrying Christ, Holy Communion to prisoners, would complete his own journey, not as a messenger, but as a martyr. Now, perhaps you're expecting a final twist, a hidden miracle, a dramatic revelation, something spectacular to explain why this story survived. And again, if so, you're wrong. Because the reason we remember the saint who walked is surprisingly simple. He valued something more than himself. That's it. That's the mystery. That is the challenge. That is the reason his name survived while countless larger names disappeared. The Roman Empire is gone. The streets have changed. The prisoners have vanished. The boys who attacked him are forgotten. But him? He remains. Not because he led armies, not because he wrote books, not because he stood before emperors, but because when asked to choose between safety and fidelity, he made his choice, and he never loosened his grip. Centuries later, Christians would look back on that boy and see something profound. Not merely a martyr, not merely a victim, but a witness. A reminder that greatness is not measured by age or fame or power. A reminder that holiness can appear in the smallest hands. You expected a bishop, you expected a preacher, you expected one of Rome's famous saints, and you were wrong. He, of course, had a name. His name is Tarcisius, just a boy, carrying what the world thought was only bread, and protecting a treasure worth more than his life. And so now you know. Now you know just a little bit more about Saint Tarcisius. All right. Well, that is the end of that one. And this one is going to it kind of has a little shout out for you.
Yeah,
it does. So this one it goes with Blessed Sacrament, which is a school, and I think it's in Peoria. Am I right? I have to look that up.
I believe. Yeah, I actually don't know. Blessed Sacrament.
Yeah, give me a second.
Let me see, because I know there's Concordia Lutheran.
I think I'm looking at. Is it Morton? Maybe that's the one. I think it's.
Yes, yeah, Morton is it. Yeah, Concordia Lutheran is in Peoria.
Yeah. No, so Blessed Sacrament, in the school that goes with it, their mascot is the Tars.
Oh.
and Tars stands for Tarsicius. And so I ran across Tarsicius whenever Good Shepherd was Good Shepherd and Bethel Lutheran. They were kind of had a co-op basketball team, and they were up against the Blessed Sacrament Tars. And I was like, "What is this? Like, who are the Tars?" And and I was told what it was, and so who it was, I guess. And so I went and looked it up. And then the last time I was actually there at one of the games again, they actually have a statue of Tarsicius in the, I don't want to call it a lobby, but basically by the front doors. So it's one of those things where I put it in my little reminder, and I said, hey, when it gets time, I need to do him as a saint in the shadow. So this one goes out to the good old Blessed Sacrament Tars for today. Mm-hmm. So anyway, his feast day is on August 15th. Now you'll notice that's more than a week away. And the reason I did this tonight though was because we're not going to be able to have podcasts next week because I'll be gone. So unfortunately, I had to do this one tonight. I did. Yeah. Now I also looked up meal stuff. And by the way, I've been really getting into making these little meal sheets. And so if you were able to get the one, great. I got another one coming. This one does not have a cocktail that goes with it. I mean, Tarsicius was a young boy. He doesn't drink.
Right.
So we do have a signature mocktail though, called the Courageous Witness, and it features white grape cranberry juice and a little bit of rosemary to garnish, and it has regular grape juice, sparkling apple cider, a little bit of lemon juice, and honey syrup. So yeah, it actually looks really nice. Good. It does. It looks really good. And then let's see here. We also have Roman herb roasted chicken. So rosemary and thyme, garlic, lemon, a bunch of good stuff with a honey carrot glaze. You betcha.
Whoa.
I know this looks really fantastic. Now I kind of hungry. Anyway, I shouldn't be, but anyway, so I'll whenever you get to this episode, if you find it on our app anyway, and maybe in the description, I'll try to put a link to the actual meal sheet thing that I made for this. So anywho, so there you go. You got a mocktail, you got a main dish. You just got great stuff. All kinds of good stuff here.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else to add?
No, I think that's it.
All right.
And so it ends. The light shines in the shadow. And now you know more about the story of one of the saints of history.